Hi there and welcome to this webinar. I'm Kendra and today I'm going to tell you all about Seamstress Accelerator, which is the program that I created in order to help you understand pattern drafting and how to draft your own pattern pieces from scratch. I'm going to tell you exactly what you're missing and why your current pattern drafting strategies are not working, why, if you've been using commercial patterns in the past, why it's time to give those up to learn this method. And at the very end of this presentation, I'm going to show you the freebie that you signed up for, in which I'm going to show you exactly how pattern blocks work, how to use them, how easy they are to draft, and how they're going to assist you to draft pattern pieces from scratch. So without further ado, I'm going to first talk about who I am, why you should trust me, and why Seamstress Accelerator is the perfect program for you to take to learn to draft your programs from scratch. So let's get started. My current job is teaching beginner seamstresses such as yourself to draft patterns and design clothes from scratch. I created an online program to assist in transforming your pattern drafting skills so that you never need to buy another commercial pattern ever again. This course is in its beta version, but it is the best course I have ever created, and it is the reason I created this free training to show you how to transform your pattern drafting skills. But before we get into exactly what is in this course and why it's the only course of its kind and the only one you need to transform your pattern drafting abilities, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, where I came from, why I created this course in the first place, and exactly how it's going to transform your skills. Essentially, why should you trust me and why this is the best next step for you. So, aside from my 9 to 5, I am also a seamstress, a cosplayer, and a cosmaker. If you're familiar with cosplaying, it's essentially creating costumes from scratch to dress up as an anime movie character, TV, or game characters. If you've ever been to an anime convention or a game convention such as Comic-Con, or you've seen other people in costume, essentially they made those costumes themselves. It's a lot of work and a lot of creative problem solving in order to make those costumes, and essentially that is my bread and butter in creative problem solving. I love coming up with creative solutions to hard to solve problems in cosplaying and pattern drafting. I love making extraordinary things from scratch with just regular materials. So essentially, sewing and pattern drafting is my outlet. I first picked up sewing when my dad put my grandmother's sewing machine right in front of me, gave me some spare scraps of fabric, gave me a quick tutorial, and then I was off and running, learning how to use my new sewing machine and learning how to assemble fabric pieces together. And from there, I just started creating clothing and accessories without a care in the world. And that is also when I realized that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. The only problem was, back then, that skill set didn't really fit into any practical plan, and I was only about 12 or 13 years old at the time. I still had to finish high school, go to college, earn a practical degree, and actually have a job that paid money. But I had found my creative outlet, and it was just a matter of how to use that outlet to make a viable income and help others who also desired that creative outlet. After I learned to sew and was brought up making clothes using commercial patterns, that is when I discovered cosplaying and making cosplays. At that point, I was about 17, and I knew for a fact that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. The only problem was that was about 15 or 20 years ago, and there was no easy way to make money as a cosplayer, unless you spent a lot of money making very intricate cosplays and were requested to show up at Comic-Cons. And again, if you're familiar with cosplaying and attending conventions, the cost of making the cosplay certainly adds up. And if you're attending the anime conventions, you have to be able to afford registration, hotel rooms, food, travel costs, etc. And I did all that for about 10 years straight, making and wearing the cosplays and getting a lot of good attention for my work. It felt amazing and very validating. But that lifestyle gets very expensive very quickly, and unless you actually have a way to sell your cosplays or get some kind of ROI for the money and time you spent making it, you kind of have to give it up because it's expensive and very hard to maintain. So that's a little bit where I came from, who I am, and my own creative pursuits, and now I'm going to tell you how I shifted my focus from cosplays to pattern drafting and clothing design to create this online course. So most of my Instagram feed is me touting a lot about how easy pattern drafting is, but in the beginning of making this shift, pattern drafting was definitely not one of my strengths, and that is why I used commercial patterns for so long to match what I wanted to make to the commercial pattern, because I didn't have a choice. I couldn't draft my own pattern pieces yet. And I was at about my 10-year mark as a cosplayer when I was still having to match the cosplays that I wanted to make to the commercial pattern because I hadn't bridged that gap. what I started to discover was that commercial patterns add a lot of time and cost to the entire project. In addition, the materials and the notions that you need to complete it, the commercial pattern doesn't always match what you're trying to make, and sometimes you have to take extra time to modify the commercial pattern in order to make it match your project. The same can be applied when you have your own clothing ideas and your own vision of how you want something to look, but that vision does not align with any commercial pattern that you can find. Then you have to find another solution to somehow complete the project so that it matches your vision. I never did add up the cost of all the things that I bought in order to make all the cosplays that I spent 10 years making, but I'm sure it's all very expensive, probably in the thousands. But I also take that as an investment into my skills because I didn't take any online courses and I figured everything out by myself. I watched several hundred YouTube tutorials to get to where I currently am, and of course, even back then, the tutorials didn't give me all the information that was required to finish the project. I had to fill in those little gaps of missing information by myself. The majority of where my money went, however, was to commercial patterns. Getting my hands dirty, making lots of mistakes, trialing new things, and experimentation. The cost of all that trial and error in those 10 years definitely added up. So, if you have never sewn before, or ever bought a commercial pattern before, or never tried to actually make something before, but you are ready to learn pattern drafting and sewing, my job is to teach you both of those things and to help you literally accelerate your skills from zero to mastery. From where you currently are to mastering pattern drafting and sewing so that you never need a commercial pattern ever again or in the first place. This means learning how to use the rawest of materials to measure yourself and use actual drafting tools to draw lines onto paper, which creates pattern pieces. Pattern drafting is just simply a matter of measuring your body in very specific places in very specific ways in order to draw lines onto pattern paper. There's obviously math involved every single time you draft. That's easy to pick up, however. Pattern drafting is the process of creating the blueprint, the flat blueprint that's going to create a completed three-dimensional piece of clothing after you assemble all the fabric panels together. It's very simple to pick up and master. It's also very easy to overthink because it looks very complicated from the outside. But anybody can pick it up as long as they follow very specific steps and stay dedicated to learning. Because there's always room for improvement, and there's also always room for error. That is why you dedicate yourself to learning starting now. So the main thing that inspired me to pursue pattern drafting, create this course, and assist beginner seamstresses to achieve the same transformation is I know how frustrating it is to be stuck in trying to put separate pieces of information together and for the learning process to be seemingly endless. When you don't know who's right, you don't know who to listen to or where to turn, and you are left with just experimenting with the different methods that you find in all these YouTube tutorials, thereby using up your own pattern drafting materials on methods that you don't know if they're proven to work. It becomes very frustrating, very overwhelming, and very demoralizing very fast. I created this online course and I started helping every seamstress that finds my account transform their pattern drafting skills because I know the frustration of not knowing how to get from A to B all too well. I made it my mission to teach my method to beginner seamstresses because I love seeing you guys succeed. I love seeing the clothes that you make and how unique your visions are, and honestly, how happy it makes you when you complete something. I love seeing others achieve that same creative transformation and experience that joy. And when I see you guys being dedicated to your own creative outlet, that makes me happy and makes me feel like we're one big community of people that are inspiring other aspiring seamstresses to do the same thing. Because not only is clothing design a beautiful creative outlet, it's also extremely empowering to see that it is possible to achieve this skill and use it to create your own unique visions. So let's talk about whether or not this course is right for you and if you should click that enroll button to get your own transformation started. Depending on where you are in your journey, this might be exactly the right step and the only course you need. You might have also surpassed this step. So if you're still here and watching, I will make the assumption that I still have the answers that you're looking for, and that Seamstress Accelerator is the course to give you the transformation you've been trying to achieve yourself. So if this course is right for you, then I know that you've been trying to draft your own pattern pieces for your own clothing designs, and you've been piecing together separate bits of information to make it all make sense. And you're very dedicated to achieving this. And maybe you've been taking sewing or pattern drafting courses, or you're trying to teach yourself by watching YouTube tutorials. The bottom line is you are dedicated to figuring out how pattern pieces work and how to draft them yourself completely from scratch. You're also interested in making this transition from commercial patterns to drafting your own pattern pieces for the same reason. You have your own unique ideas and you've been using commercial patterns to make your ideas real. But commercial patterns only go so far, and at some point you realize that commercial patterns are not the way for you to teach yourself how to draft pattern pieces, they are in fact what's holding you back from buying the raw materials you need to do it all by yourself. And so now you're at the point where you're trying to find all the pieces of the puzzle to draft your pattern pieces accurately, and you're stuck somewhere in between needing that commercial pattern and experimenting with new methods that you're still trying to master. And you are so close to figuring it out, which is why you are here right now to learn what the secret is. So your main frustration is that you know that there's something missing, maybe more than one thing, depending on where you are and how much experimentation you've done. You just haven't quite cracked the code to the point that you are ready to proceed and get your raw materials to start drafting your own pattern pieces. I bet you're also feeling stuck because the thought of spending more money on raw materials and experimenting with those raw materials is also making you nervous because you're only comfortable spending so much money to invest into yourself, especially if you've already spent quite a lot of time, money, and effort trying to figure this out by yourself. And the thought of spending more money is quite exhausting and frustrating, especially if you've been making this journey alone and nobody has been around to answer your questions, or you haven't found a mentor that can really help you put the pieces together, pun not intended. And even if I'm saying all the right things and I'm describing you and your journey perfectly, you're still worried that even after you trust me and the process enough to enroll, you're doubting your own ability to understand the process. One thing I can tell you for certain right now is the fact that you are still here means that you are going to succeed. So let's talk about what you hope to achieve by taking Seamstress Accelerator and what I can tell you will happen when you enroll. You're going to receive full access to the entire course, meaning none of it is restricted. You'll be able to see the beginning and the end. In order to get the most from this course, you're going to go through it step by step, video by video, and watch all the video tutorials in their entirety, because there is a very finite process to this whole thing, which you're going to pick up very quickly. The entire course is self-paced, so you go through each module when you have time to. Each module is made to be its own separate subject. The videos are very short, easy to understand, and very digestible. As you move through the course, you will be building your own foundational concepts of pattern drafting. Each successive module is built on top of what you already learned in the previous one. So as you learn, everything comes together so that there's no confusion and that you can move smoothly from start to end. By the time you are done with Seamstress Accelerator, you will understand exactly what you need to be able to make this transition, and you'll have already made it because you're going to go through the modules, the tutorials, and you're actually going to physically use the pattern drafting materials to draft pattern pieces that I show you how to draft. You'll know exactly how to choose your own materials and notions, and the last module, I show you how to go step by step, choosing a design, drafting pattern pieces, choosing your materials, and how the fabric panels come together to complete the garment. Ultimately, you're going to learn how to be independent and make your own design decisions as a seamstress. You're going to learn to be resourceful and how to draft pattern pieces you never attempted before and how to find pattern pieces for which you don't even know the names. You're going to be completely confident starting projects that you never would have attempted otherwise. You're going to confidently start and complete projects that you only dreamed you'd be able to complete by yourself. All those things will be made possible because you took this course. So what do my students normally try before they actually enroll in SA, and why that one thing usually fails them before they finally succeed in my course? So when I got right down to it and I wanted one simple answer on how to draft pattern pieces from scratch, I simply Googled it. And here's what I learned. I learned about the method that I teach in Seamstress Accelerator, but it's not as easy as I just said it was. Even if you click out of this webinar right now and actually try this on Google, here's what you're going to find. Pattern blocks are the most recommended way to draft your pattern pieces from scratch on a flat surface. And I can tell you right now, there are hundreds of YouTube tutorials that will take you through how to draft your own pattern blocks. The missing information is how to properly measure yourself, how to properly draft them, and how you can be 100% sure that even after you go through the entire process, according to the instructions given, that your pattern block is going to fit you correctly. That is where most of my students get stuck because they don't know how to get from A to B, from drafting the pattern block to knowing for sure that the pattern block fits them correctly. That pattern block has to fit you for it to properly work. The answer is 99.9% of the time, that pattern block does not fit you even after you follow all the steps perfectly. There are more steps to take, and this is exactly what I discovered, that I had to take more steps to bridge that gap. But I bridged the gap and I figured it out. Now I have pattern blocks that fit me perfectly. I went through all the necessary steps to draft them according to the tutorials and make sure that what I drafted actually works for any clothing design that I want to make. Though I did have to make the mistake of assuming that after I drafted the pattern block the first time, that it fit the way it was meant to. There is more to the process than what you are seeing in any YouTube tutorial. This is where Seamstress Accelerator picks up and gives you the answers that you need to be successful. So not only are you going to learn how to do everything properly from measuring to drafting, you're going to see how to make sure that all the pattern blocks that you draft fit you correctly so that you can draft any pattern piece you need to draft and not be scared that you missed a step or you have to repeat an entire process that you did or experience any of the negative emotions that you have ever experienced while trying to figure out this process by yourself. I also want to make you aware of all the mistakes that I made in my journey so that you can avoid those mistakes and get from A to B much more smoothly. So honestly, my biggest struggle in getting from A to B was thinking I already knew everything. Because I had spent so much time using commercial patterns, I thought I already knew all the answers that I was looking for. But obviously I hadn't. I didn't have all the answers because I hadn't figured it out because I wasn't able to draft my own pattern pieces from scratch. I had exactly what you have, all separate bits of information in multiple different tutorials, and I was trying to piece everything together. The easiest way to make it from A to B is knowing that while you have some insight, especially if you've already used commercial patterns before, you don't have the answers since you have not bridged the gap yet. And you really need to have an open mind and complete one more experiment to draft your own pattern pieces. The only difference between this experiment in Seamstress Accelerator and the others that you have already completed is that this one will give you what you have been trying to achieve. So my turning point was when I realized that this was the pattern drafting method that I had been looking for. I also realized that commercial patterns really had been holding me back because I had already decided that I already knew or could figure it out by myself how to draft my own pattern pieces without this method, and I was completely wrong. Because you have used one or several commercial patterns does not mean that you have any idea how pattern pieces work, which is why I also tout if you're ready to give up commercial patterns to draft your own pattern pieces, you actually do need to stop using commercial patterns. Because even though you've seen what pattern pieces look like and how they assemble, the actual process of drafting them from scratch is completely different from buying a pre-made kit and cutting them out in your correct size. The breakthrough that I found was that once I started getting comfortable with this new pattern drafting strategy, I could not use another commercial pattern before, even if I thought I really needed one. You have to follow through on this process and master it. You can't go backwards. So this is essentially the origin story of Seamstress Accelerator and why it exists, because I found this gap in all the YouTube tutorials where I was desperate to find the same answers that you are currently looking for. Seamstress Accelerator answers every single one of those questions that you have. It fills in the gaps that you have been trying to fill. If you're ready to achieve your own creative freedom and make your own clothes, this is the course for you. This is the only course that you will need. Seamstress Accelerator will make you a thoughtful and educated seamstress. You'll gain the resources you need to make smart and educated choices when you go to pick your materials, fabrics, and notions for every project that you start. The pattern drafting method that you'll find inside Seamstress Accelerator is easier and faster because it is fully automated. 90% of the work is already done because you have already drafted the pattern blocks, and you're going to go through the steps to ensure that they fit you. The only thing that you need to worry about every time you start a new project is creating blank pattern pieces, which is an incredibly easy process. The thing that makes this pattern drafting method unique, easier, and faster is how simple it is. The last thing I wanted was to use a method that is overly complicated and causes overthinking and frustration. And because I already overthink everything, I needed it to be extremely straightforward and easy to use. So my method comes with rules and regulations. I also wanted to create a method that was easy and efficient. I didn't want to spend more than an hour trying to figure out how to draft pattern pieces because I have a full life, 2 kids, and a household to run. I wanted to make clothes, but I also had chores to do, so pattern drafting had to fit into my daily life and couldn't make it more difficult or complicated. It also had to be versatile and allow me to draft any pattern piece that I needed within 15 to 20 minutes from measuring to drafting. And it has to be easy as long as I follow the set rules. If you fully commit to following all of the tutorials and all the steps in Seamstress Accelerator in 30 days or less, you'll have finished the course. You will have already drafted your pattern pieces. You will have already learned how pattern blocks work and how easy it is to use them to draft any pattern piece you need. You can design your own clothes as fast or as slow as you want. You can start big projects and expect for them to be completed in the time that you have allotted yourself to draft and sew. This is especially true if you have a life, a job, kids, and you have your own share of chores and you're running a household. You don't have that much time to draft and sew. I teach you a very fast and versatile method that you can draft your own pattern pieces in a matter of minutes. So a lot of my students who have seen my methods and have started using them, what they usually comment is that they're sorry they didn't find this method much sooner. And that's exactly what I thought to myself when I started my journey of trying to give up commercial patterns to draft my own pattern pieces. So let me tell you a little bit about the Seamstress Accelerator curriculum and what you can expect to learn and how each successive module is going to build on top of what you already learned in the previous. So Module 1 is going to tell you what your starting point is. And Module 1 basically takes you through everything that commercial patterns tell you to do or help you do and what you are going to start learning to do by yourself without the commercial pattern. Module 2 has new information regarding pattern drafting tools that I use and the math that you need to learn in order to accurately draft your pattern blocks. It is quite vital because in Module 3, you're going to be drafting your own pattern blocks. The ones that I have included in Module 3 include a bodice that gives you a shirt, a sleeve, and a skirt. The bodice has 2 parts, and so does the skirt. You do not need to draft every pattern block that is available, but I did include 5 different pattern block drafting tutorials to give you as many design options as I use. Module 4 takes you through how to use your pattern blocks to draft new pattern pieces, but the process is extremely simple. Module 5 teaches you about fabrics and how to make your own decisions about what fabric works for any project you choose to start. And the biggest takeaway from this is that not every fabric works for every project you choose. So I teach you exactly how to make thoughtful decisions so that your visions of your clothes become reality. Module 6 is where I take you step by step through all the steps that were previously discussed in the modules before Module 6 so that you can see it all happening in real time, from choosing a design, drafting the pattern pieces, choosing the fabric, to laying the pattern pieces out onto fabric. The big bonuses that I have included in this module include the very secret method that I use to measure out fabric. Because once you stop using commercial patterns, you are responsible for determining how much fabric you need for each project. The commercial pattern provides those measurements for you. But once you stop using commercial patterns, you need to figure that out by yourself. And I am giving you a very exclusive, very secret method that I created myself. The other bonuses include done-for-you templates so that you're able to choose the materials that you need before you ever go to purchase your materials when you start every new project. And a tutorial that takes you through how to properly label your pattern pieces. A bonus that tells you how to properly label your pattern pieces, because this is absolutely essential in making sure that your products come out the way that you envision them. And a tutorial to teach you how to properly make a vision board of ideas that make the most sense to you and the ones that you should invest into in order to continue to accelerate your skills and teach yourself to become more confident as a seamstress. So before you click out of this webinar because you're still not sure or still hesitant about whether or not Seamstress Accelerator is the right thing for you to take right this minute, there is a 7-day money-back guarantee from the date of purchase. As long as you can prove to me that you have gone through the entire course and you can show me that you drafted your pattern blocks, you went through the test to make sure that they fit you, and even then, we're going to talk about what your hesitations are and especially where you're having trouble. If you do need more help in making sure that the pattern block fits you, and if you already went through the process and it didn't work out, I will help you get to that finish line. I want to make sure that we have gone down every single avenue that we need to go down in order to make you feel comfortable with making this transition. Because I can promise you right now, this course is exactly what you are looking for, especially if you're still here. I fill in all the pieces of missing information, and I give you the complete method that allows you to pattern draft confidently. And I am so confident that you're going to be very happy with this course, and you're going to start pattern drafting to your heart's delight that you have a full week to go through the course materials and all the bonuses, and then still tell me if this is not the right course for you. And I can tell you right now, if you do not enroll at this moment, that it is okay, but I promise that you're going to continue to struggle to fill in the pieces of missing information by yourself, because my completed method only exists in this course. Because once you become my student, I help you in any way, shape, or form that I can in order to help you achieve your own creative freedom and feel comfortable making this very complicated transition. If you do not take action on this right now, you will continue to struggle, but you already knew that. The process does not get any easier if you do not get the answers that you've been looking for. You're going to get even more discouraged, even more frustrated, and you'll continue to run yourself into a rabbit hole of trying to find the answers for free. I do not want you to struggle like that. Certainly, if you don't need to, because you've got other things to worry about in your life other than trying to figure this whole thing out by yourself. I'm going to give you one final permission slip to enroll in Seamstress Accelerator. You and your creative freedom are worth it. It is worth not to struggle anymore. It is worth not to be overwhelmed by this process. And again, if you are still thinking that it's too expensive, or you still have the time and perseverance to find the answers you're looking for by yourself, you can still enroll right now and take 7 days to go through the entire course, draft your pattern blocks, test your pattern blocks, and show me that you did all that work before you DM me on day 7 and say, yeah, this is not the right course for me. I'd like my money back. That conversation is permissible if that is how you really feel. That's no problem. But I have a very good feeling that this course is exactly what you've been looking for, and that conversation is not going to happen because you're going to be thrilled with how well you do and how many breakthroughs that you have when you enroll and start going through the modules. So hopefully I have given you every bit of encouragement, information, and quieted those fears and reservations that you have been feeling since you started this webinar in the first place. One last thing I want to add, I wouldn't be giving you this method if it wasn't the easiest thing I have ever found, because I like it when things are easy. I overcomplicate everything myself, and I'm certainly not going to give you a complicated method. And I am very confident that even if you have zero experience, you are ready for this course. So click the enroll button below this video, and I hope to see you inside Seamstress Accelerator. So I hope that I will see you inside. That's the end of this presentation, and I hope to see a lot of you inside Seamstress Accelerator, and I can't wait to hear about all of your wins. So following this presentation, I'm going to show you the freebie that you signed up for. That is coming up next. Okay, so here is the demonstration that I'm going to do so that you can see on a very simple level exactly how pattern blocks work and how easy they are to use to draft your own pattern pieces. So this is going to be our end product. The little piece of paper, and it says original because the point of it is to be the original pattern block. That is why it says original on the front. So the reason why we're doing this on a miniature level instead of using your full body to scale out and draft a pattern block is because the actual process of drafting your own pattern block is going to take quite a bit of time, a few hours, and because I wanted to give you a quick demonstration and not take up too much more of your time, but give you a very good idea of how a pattern block works and why it will work to draft your own pattern pieces, we're going to keep it simple and do this on a miniature level. So I'm going to tell you the tools that you need right now. If you happen to have a Barbie doll, I have Princess Ariel. I'm going to use her and her measurements, her body measurements, in order to complete this pattern block, in order to show you how to do it. If you have a mini dress form, maybe an action figure that's as tall as this one, as tall as a regular Barbie, that you can also use. You're going to have a piece of paper, piece of construction paper. You're going to jot down measurements that we're going to get. One is for bust, and in this order, bust, waist, hips, and length. I'm going to show you exactly how and where to do those in just a minute. You need flexible measuring tape, a ruler, French curve, pencil, and scissors. All right, so I'm going to move this over to the side so that you can still see all the measurements. I'm going to jot them in just a moment. So the best way to do this, if you have a Barbie doll that's super flexible, move her arms out of the way. We're only going to take her front body measurements. I'll show you what that means in just a moment. We're going to start with her bust. You're going to take a measurement from seam to seam all the way across where her chest is the biggest. That equals 3 inches. I'm going to add an extra inch, take it to 4 inches. I'm going to write 4 inches right here, 4 inches. Next, you're going to take the smallest part of the waist. From seam to seam, that's about 2.5 inches, and to add an extra inch gives you 3.5 inches. The largest part of her hips. Seam to seam is 3 inches, and we're going to add an extra inch, 4 inches. Next, the top of the pattern block is going to be right about here, just above the bust. So the entire length of the pattern block is going to be from about here to about where you took that waist measurement, which is approximately here. So we're looking at 3 inches total. Next, you're going to put in measurements in between the measurements you already took so that you know exactly how far in between the bust and the waist measurement are, so that you know exactly how much distance is in between the bust and waist measurement, the waist and hips measurement, right? So that's what these other lines are for. So I'm going to approximate between the bust and the waist, which you're just simply going to take it from the bust to the smallest part of the waist, which is about 1 inch. So 1 inch here. From the waist to the hips, about the same, 1 inch. Okay. This is only a quarter of the full body measurements. It does not cover half of her body, it covers a quarter. You're going to take the half body measurements that you measured and divide them by 2. So the bust measurement is going to be divided by 2. 3.5 gets divided by 2. And again, 4 gets divided by 2. So we know this is 2 inches, 2 inches. 3.5 divided by 2 is, I believe, 1.75. These are your final measurements now. So using these measurements, we now come to the side of the paper and we start plotting out our points. So the full length of her body from top to bottom was 3 inches total. So here's 0, and here is the distance between her neck and her hips. From here, you can leave the tape up. The bust measurement was 1 inch. I'm approximating 1 inch from her neck to her bust. So that's going to be right here, plotted out 1 inch. The next one, her waist, 1 inch from the bust. And the hips measurement has already been plotted because the length measurement ended at her hips. From here, we get rid of this. Now we grab the ruler. So now we plot the actual measurements that we calculated, that we cut in half. So that was her neck. Her bust measurement is, the final measurement is 2 inches. So I'm going to take it from 2 and bring it all the way back in. Okay, that's the bust. The waist measurement is 1.75. So from 0 on the paper, 1, 1/2, 1.75. And as you start to plot your lines, you're going to kind of see it take shape because the bust was here, the waist was here. So it kind of makes sense where basically you should start to see an hourglass shape. The hip measurement, the last one, is again 2 inches. and draw it in. From here, you're going to connect this point, connect this point. That is the bust to the waist, waist to the hips. So now we're going to work on the armhole, and it starts right where the bust is. So I'm going to bring out my French curve. And this absolutely does not need to be exact. And I'm going to give her lots of room here. So basically I'm going to take it and bring it all the way up. And if your lines kind of intersect or so, there you go. That is the line that we're looking for. Next, her neck hole. So using the same sort of area, I'm going to make this nice and big. There you go. And there is your completed pattern block. Now we cut it out and we test it to make sure that it fits her. Okay. On here I'm also going to write test because this is the test. Because we don't know for a fact that it fits. We're pretty confident that it'll fit her though. We're going to just kind of match up the margins here, make sure that everything works. And as we can see, it looks pretty good. Yes, it's a little bit big, but I always like to go a little bit bigger. I always go bigger, no matter what. So the armhole can go a little bit bigger. So actually, I'm going to do that right now. And that looks much more comfortable, and now it actually fits. And also granted that she's already wearing something, so if she didn't have the dress on, it would probably be a better fit, but I didn't want to take all her clothes off and just keep this a simple demonstration. So the next step would be, you would test it using fabric. The next step of this is to take this test pattern block that we're not sure if it fits perfectly, put it onto test fabric. I'm going to do that next. Okay, so here's my test fabric. It's felt, it's nice and thick. I'm going to fold it in half. The pattern block goes onto the fold. The middle edge, the edge that's supposed to be in, here's what I mean by the middle, it's in the middle of her body, right? So that's going to go right here on the edge. Going to trace it out. You can go right up to the edge because I already included seam allowance, the extra inch, when I was measuring all the measurements. Okay, so there's that. Keep it folded exactly where it is and cut it out. And when you open it up, there it is. Perfect, symmetrical little shirt. Plenty of room to attach it to the back. I know our hair's in the way. So there's the completed test on Barbie. The nice thing is the felt is nice and stretchy. It has a little bit of give. What we look for is that the seams, the edges, come past where I took the measurement, as they should, because that's how you know it's got plenty of room to attach to a back panel if I were to make this for the back panel. Move Ariel's hair this way, then you can see that the shoulders also work and make it to the other side, where they would, again, attach. So as you can see, that works. That is how, when you enroll in Seamstress Accelerator, how you will be making your test pattern block, because the first draft of your pattern block is going to be a test, and this is how you're going to test it. You're actually going to make this yourself and wear it. The actual process of drafting your own pattern block and testing it is going to be a little bit more complicated, but it's complicated because we are all different shapes and sizes, and Barbie is very, very straightforward and has very small curves. So the process for drafting your pattern block is going to be very, very similar to this, but still is going to have its own ups and downs. You're still going to make the pattern block. You're still going to test it just like we just did for Barbie. But there's going to be a little bit more testing and adjusting and tweaking involved in making sure that this is correct. And like I said in the webinar, more than likely that first draft you make of your pattern block is more than likely not going to fit you, even if you do everything correctly according to the video tutorials. So that is what I'm going to show you. It's what I'm going to teach you to make sure that when you go to draft your pattern blocks, that they come out, that the final draft of your pattern blocks fits you perfectly so that you can make pattern pieces that you need. Pattern pieces that you need. So that is the end of this freebie. Feel free to go through the steps and do this all yourself just to get that much more confident with pattern blocks. Like I said, I wanted to keep it simple and give you a very quick, like, this is how pattern blocks work. This is what I've been using now for 6 years. I have never bought another commercial pattern since, and with good reason, because this whole method is excellent. It's versatile, it's fast, it's simple. And that's the end of this freebie. So I hope that I see you inside of Seamstress Accelerator. If you have any additional questions regarding the curriculum or how this freebie goes, or if you missed a step, please feel free to go back and check it out again. Otherwise, I hope to see you inside Seamstress Accelerator. Click that enroll button and get started.